Hi there, I'm Jeff Stein.
And I'm Michael Isikoff.
And this is SpyTalk's Week in Review. And my God, what a week. Another crazy week. My head is exploding. We have Michael Waltz, the National Security Advisor, being ousted. Boy, imagine getting a call saying the president wants you to be his National Security Advisor.
He went through 4 the first time. Right. And actually, Waltz has lasted a lot longer than Mike Flynn did in the first administration.
Can you imagine the chill that goes down your back if you get that call to be National Security Advisor? Anyway, so little Marco Rubio, as Trump once called, he's Secretary of State, but he's now going to be the National Security Advisor, as well as running the decimated USAID Foreign Assistance Program. My God, what it adds up to me, Mike, is that Trump is going to be his own national security advisor, and he'll make up his mind what he wants to do and tell people to do it. I mean, who's left at the NSC?
Yeah, well, he's always been his own national security advisor, his own economic advisor. I mean, he calls the shots, and then everybody. I don't know if you watched the cabinet meeting this week, where the whole point was each cabinet member goes around the room talking about what a great job Donald Trump is doing and how they're doing everything they can to help him out and fulfill his lofty dear leader's agenda. On Waltz leaving, a couple of points. First of all, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when Laura Loomer, arch MAGA conspiracy theorist, a woman who believes 9/11 was an inside job, gets access to dear leader El Presidente and basically calls the shots for 6 members of the National Security Council to be fired because they weren't sufficiently MAGA. Mike Waltz came in to their meeting at one point, tried to defend members of the staff, and voila, Trump favors Laura Loomer over his national security advisor.
Well, it gives me hope that, if there's a Democrat elected, you or I can be invited in the Oval Office and give pearls of wisdom to the next president, because we're bloggers.
And we can come up with crazy conspiracy theories if we wanted to.
But, this raises a really important question. Pardon us, about intelligence. I mean, there is no intelligence chief on the National Security Council now, I guess. And, the DNI is in kind of, I don't know what it is. We're going to get back to the Director of National Intelligence, but the CIA is still evolving. Key people have not been appointed to mission centers. There's pressure from the White House to, get rid of any Biden era holdovers, as if these career officials had anything to do with Biden.
Right.
So we have we got to keep our fingers crossed that there's no major attack right now, terrorist attack or China invading Taiwan, or God knows what's going to happen in Ukraine. So
two quick points just on the Waltz departure. Number one is it wasn't just Waltz. Also, his deputy, Alex Wong, has also been ousted.
He was Loomer.
Yeah. He was a target of Loomer's in that meeting, and he's the one guy. She couldn't get fired then, but 2 weeks later, she's accomplished all her entire agenda, gone down her target list. And Waltz is going to be nominated to be UN ambassador.
That shows how little Trump thinks of the UN.
Right. But there is a positive side to that, which means he will have to go before the Senate for confirmation, and will have to answer questions about that signal chat that first, set off all the concerns and investigations into how the Trump people were handling national security secrets. And we may finally get answers like, how did Jeffrey Goldberg actually get invited? What was his name doing in Waltz's contacts, which he initially denied? All those questions. And I should point out also the Wall Street Journal is reporting that there is an ongoing Pentagon Inspector General investigation into the Signal chat, because we learned this week that there's the second Signal chat in which Hegseth was sharing details about the Yemen attacks with his wife. Exactly. So
the next door neighbor who helps wash the cars, he was in on the chats. I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, I think the term of art for all this is shit show.
Yeah.
Pardon me. But, that's
that.
what we call it in Washington. But
right.
Wow, what a mess. Let's talk about this incredible interview that I was going to kind of brush off as another kind of, standard form BS kind of interview featuring Tulsi Gabbard on Megyn Kelly show. But she said some really interesting things. I listened to the whole thing, so you don't have to. And one of the things she was asked about is, how deep is the rot?
Well, no, that she used those words, and in fact,
I'm sorry, right?
We have a clip, and I think it is quite revealing about Gabbard's mindset. She clearly sees herself in the middle of a viper pit, surrounded by political enemies, and I think this informs a lot of the way she has been handling her job as DNI. We have the clip in which this phrase comes up, and I think it's worth listening to it, and then we can talk about it a bit.
Well, I'm sure there are people who work here and within the intelligence community who probably don't think or speak very kindly of me either, specifically because, again, through the president's leadership and the mandate of the American people, I know exactly what I need to do here and how deep the rot is within the intelligence community that has to be rooted out.
Well, I'm interested in what the president's leadership is on intelligence. If she's got that figured out, she's way ahead of the rest of us.
Right. But also, just think about it. Think if you are a career analyst at ODNI, you've been there through multiple administrations, you've given your advice, and here you have your new boss talking about the deep rot that you represent, that you're a part of, and this is the person you're working for. And she obviously doesn't think she has the trust of the people who are working for her. And she makes pretty clear she does not have the trust of them.
It seems to me there's a general mistrust of expertise.
Right.
For starters. And so if you're a career person and you've developed expertise, they don't want you. Mm-hmm. But on top of that is that anyone who has worked under a Democratic administration, not as a political point that we have to point out. I mean, these career intelligence professionals are not 99% of them are not political appointees. They're in their jobs because they know something about Iraq or ISIS or Russia, Ukraine, whatever. They're experts. So that's why they're hired. So they just want to clean out anyone who really doesn't pass kind of a loyalty test to dear leader.
Right. And listen, we're seeing that across the board, of course, in multiple departments of the government, Justice Department, FBI. But there was a bit of news that Gabbard broke in this interview, and she talked in some detail about leaks, and this sort of is a natural follow-on for feeling she's surrounded by political enemies. Because she's actually, look, every administration gets serious about leaks when they first, take office. They make efforts to crack down on them. Usually, they don't go very far, or they are pulled back. But
it's a playbook we've seen for decades.
But we've got. But she talks. She says in this interview that she's already referred 3 cases to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution, and she's looking at 11 others. And this comes
under internal investigation.
And may end up getting referred to the Justice Department. I should point out that she's saying this the same week that Attorney General Bondi has revoked the Garland rules for forbidding the Justice Department prosecutors prosecutors from getting the cell phone information and other phone records from reporters. So open season for Justice and the FBI to begin doing that.
Need we point out the breathtaking hypocrisy here?
Yeah.
All these people using the signal,
right. Some of the biggest security breaches that we've seen in years have taken place during this little 100-day period of Donald Trump 2. And here they are, and it's by them. They're the leakers. But let's actually listen to another clip from that interview that I think is revealing, because she's talking about one story in particular that is worth our digging into.
One of the leaks was, it spoke to what Trump is trying to do with the deportations, not the securing of the southern border, but the deportations. Yeah. And he has declared under the Alien Enemies Act an invasion or incursion, in part saying that the Venezuelan government has dispatched Tren de Aragua, this gang, to come into the United States and commit mayhem. And one of the things that was leaked from someone in the intel community was that didn't happen. There is no official link between the Venezuelan government and Tren de Aragua. Therefore, it's not an incursion. It's not an invasion. It's a very clear why somebody would leak that to try to undermine the president's use of the Alien Enemies Act. Is that one of the leaks being investigated?
It is being investigated. There's a few things to add to that to kind of color out the picture. One of the most often tactics that these leakers use is they will take, let's say it's a 6-page top secret classified document, and they will pull a line from page 1 and a line from page 2 and a line from page 3 that when put together supports the narrative that they are trying to push, but is not at all reflective of the kind of conclusive analysis in that report. And that's exactly what happened in this case.
So
she should talk. My God, this is a woman who was on Russian state media all the time, picking and choosing things to say that conform with Russian propaganda. My God.
All right. So a couple of things to say about this. First of all, the story she's talking about is a Washington Post story from April 17th, which reported that the National Intelligence Council, which represents the views of 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, all of whom report to her, the DNI. The Post story, they reported, determined in a secret assessment early this month that the Venezuelan government is not directing an invasion of the United States by the prison gang Tren de Aragua, a judgment that contradicts President Trump's public statements.
Nothing there.
All right. So, first of all, she talked about this as a top secret government document. She goes on in the interview to talk about the contents of that document selectively. So she is disclosing aspects of this top secret document that she's bemoaned the leakers for leaking for. But the story that she's objecting to reported that 17 out of the 18 intelligence agencies all reached the conclusion that there's no connection between the Maduro government and this Venezuelan gang inside the United States. The Trump administration has used a supposed connection as the basis under the Alien Enemies Act to begin these mass deportations to El Salvador. But the one intelligence agency that had a somewhat different view, with moderate confidence, is the FBI, that did find some connections between some of the gang members and people in the Venezuelan government. We haven't seen the full document. Clearly, that's the only part of this National Intelligence Council report that that Gabbard refers to in her answer, right? So she forgets the 17 other U.S. intelligence agencies that report to her that reach the completely different conclusion than the one she's touting.
And let's remember who's running the FBI. I mean, you know, they got a extreme rightist MAGA guy who campaigned against Washington, campaigned against the FBI before he got the job to run the FBI, a real politico. And he's got a deputy who's no law enforcement experience, really, and who's a right-wing blogger. I mean, so...
Kash Patel and Dan Bongino.
So what is that?
Anyway, look, the point is that what Gabbard was doing there was selectively picking from a National Intelligence Council report, kind of in ways that's a little reminiscent of the W. Bush administration in the run-up to the Iraq War, selectively picking aspects of intelligence that supported a political narrative they were trying to thrust upon the country. And not accurately reporting. Look, she in this interview touts their transparency for an issue we'll get to in a moment. Let's see some transparency on this one. Let's see that full National Intelligence Council report. Let's see what each intelligence agency said. If she's going to talk about it, she should be able to back it up with actual transparent disclosure of aspects of that report.
Well, to coin a phrase from a famous, I think it was Arthur Goldberg, Kennedy's UN ambassador, I'm prepared to wait till hell freezes over to get some transparency.
Actually, it was Actually, it was Adlai Stevenson who said that during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
That's why you have me here.
I know. Thank you very much. Exactly why I have you here. So anyway, there were some other things, interesting things that she said.
Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, she did talk a bit about the president and her desire to avoid another Mideast war. And there's a lot of liberals and progressives who will find some reassurance from the way she talked about the need to be careful when getting into foreign entanglements. Now, how one squares that with wanting to take over Greenland, Panama, Canada, and Gaza is,
that's a bit neo-Connie.
To say the least. But
and she used this phrase, she worries about people co-opted by the military-industrial complex. Boy, that seems right out of Noam Chomsky to me.
Or Dwight Eisenhower, who coined the phrase, of course, his farewell address.
Thanks again. But so she did not deny that she had counseled the president on Iran to go slow, to back off an attack in concert with Israel. So
with Iran.
The U.S. in concert with Israel.
In concert with Israel
attacking Iran.
Right.
So that was interesting. That's part of the team.
Right.
And that's one of the things that crazy Laura Loomer was screaming about is neoconservatives, So anyway, she shows she's on the team.
Yeah. Now, one little excerpt from the interview, which I'd like to buttonhole, since she talked a lot about transparency in this interview, but the big transparent act that they've touted was the release of the JFK assassination documents, the complete release,
right?
And the unredactions, which a lot of people got excited about in anticipation. There was a big hearing that Congresswoman Luna chaired, in which she talked about
no relation to Loomer, but
no relations other than the loony connection of the two of them.
Big hearing on the
in which she talked, Luna did, about the staggering revelations. And here's Megyn Kelly asking Gabbard about what actually this big act of transparency revealed to the world, at least about the Kennedy assassination itself, if we can play that clip.
Most people thought it didn't add that much. Am I wrong?
I gotta say, I'm not someone who has studied these over the years, so I'm probably about where you are.
Yeah.
There were new pieces of information.
Did you get a briefing from somebody who said, holy God, it really was the CIA?
No.
Okay.
And those who are experts on this, who've studied this for a long time, did not find what they were looking for.
Boom.
Boom. So there it is. The CIA has been cleared.
Once again,
60 years later.
Well, we have to say, there's some sketchy stuff about CIA and Oswald, blah, blah, blah. But, this idea CIA killed Kennedy, really got to put a stake in it,
Yeah. Even though there are still people waving the flag, trying to pretend that there's something there. All right.
So
2 other matters?
Yep. Leaks, for example. The Washington Post reported last week that, or at the beginning of this week, that this leak investigation is going to include widespread polygraphs. That's got a lot of people freaked out. I wrote about it yesterday. There's lots of questions about polygraphs, their reliability and so on, and their efficiency and so on. Somebody else, a reader, reached out to me yesterday and said, these people are busy. There's a big backlog on polygraphs for security clearances of employees. Where are they going to get polygraphers to do all these leak investigations?
Yeah,
which is true. So, but the polygraphs, as an inspector general told me decades ago, it's kind of a fool's errand. The leaks often lead right back to the offices in the White House and so forth and so on. And but they can do a lot of damage. They can ruin people's careers and so on. So,
there are people. Remember, James Risen went through years of investigation because of a leak into a CIA guy who was accused of leaking to him about Iran nuclear programs. And look, they got Risen's phone records, they got his credit card bills, they got all sorts of stuff. Even though he was not under investigation for commission of any crime, when the Justice Department and the FBI have full reign to investigate these leaks, they can go pretty far. So now that we know that the Garland rules have been revoked by Bondi, I think we can certainly expect other journalists who are, plowing the same ground we are going to be subjected to some of these very costly and arduous leak investigations.
And that could go on for a long time before that, too, is leaked. So, reporters are not going to know that their phones are tapped.
Yes.
Or their emails being monitored until some good person inside the agency says this has gone too far, investigating spying on the press. So,
right. All right, I want to close out with a interesting story about the CIA trying to recruit Chinese spies. Now, there have been stories for a number of years that the CIA needs to step up its game to get intelligence from inside China. It lost a whole bunch of its assets. Some years ago, it was quite a debacle, and the CIA was sort of flying blind when it came to China, even while the Chinese were penetrating, all sorts of telecommunications systems and hacking into government databases and learning all sorts of stuff about us. We were not learning as much about them. So what has the CIA done? They've put together a series of videos in Mandarin Chinese that they are going to put on YouTube, I guess, hoping that people in China will see them. We have some of these clips. If we can play one, just to give you a little flavor. It is in Chinese, I should point out.
这种晚宴，最晚到的人总是会成为众人议论的话题。我不是一个胆小怕事的人。
Well, I only studied Chinese for 6
that?
months at Harvard summer school, but I got the drift of that, you know.
The drift is that there are what these videos shows is a Chinese official, government official, getting ready to go to a big meeting with his wife, with the party faithful, right? It's a small, intimate dinner of party henchmen. And they go to the dinner, and then the next time they go, they're locked out. So the point is they're trying to make is that Chinese government officials or party officials who have been passed over for jobs they might want or fired or whatever. One of the quotes is, "As I rise within the party, I watch those above me being discarded like worn out shoes."
Yeah.
But now I realize that my fate was just as precarious as theirs. What I was thinking is, hey, you know, that exact message could be used to members of the Trump administration being discarded like worn out shoes. For instance, Mike Waltz and Alex Wong, who we started out working.
Yeah,
right?
look, there is actually some worry that, I mean, we're not just talking about a couple NSC officials. I don't think we have to worry about those guys flipping over to the Chinese or Russians or anybody else.
No,
but they are lopping off thousands of employees in the intelligence and defense communities. And, you know, some of these people might have, you know, some severe financial needs and have other motivations like resentment, you know, that other people got ahead while they were fired and so on. But this is classic espionage stuff. You find a weakness in an official and you try to exploit it. But they got to come to you first, really. I mean, it's not like, you know, the CIA shows up at an international business meeting and walks up to a Chinese official and said, "Hey, you know, anytime you're ready to you know, flip, you know, I'm here. Here's my business card." Although cold pitches are made all the time, by the way. So that's true. But I suspect this is really more about, you know, psychological warfare, rattling China's bureaucracy globally, because, you know, it's not like it's a secret message sent to China. This is available. Anybody can see this recruitment pitch, and I'm sure there's a lot of laughter about it.
By the way, in another
tool.
Yeah, in another clip, a narrator declares, quote, "Our leaders' failure to fulfill repeated promises of prosperity has become a well-known secret." That seems like another line that could apply to the Trump administration.
I haven't seen all the videos, but, you know, corruption is a big issue. I've been interested in this issue for some time and occasionally ask an intelligence source of mine whether China's vast corruption is driving recruits our way. And I get nods on that. Of course, it's in the interest of my sources to say, yeah, we're getting recruits. But yeah, corruption is a big driver of dissatisfaction within the ranks and can drive someone to become available to CIA. But yeah, and there's lots of these motivations that apply to people in the Trump administration. I mean,
sure. So look, my two final points on this are, number one, and you kind of raised it at the beginning, like, you know, who's going to watch these and how effective are they? You know, I kind of am looking forward to the day that Doge folks get into the CIA and try to do some sort of cost benefit analysis about how many people actually respond to these videos and whether they work and whether they actually, I suppose if we get even one, or the CIA gets even one spy out of it, it might be worth it. But
they've already been sniffing around up there, and there's we've seen political pressure on CIA to get with the MAGA program, and they sent in open communication, open email, they sent a list of names, you know, to the White House of recent hires that they wanted fired. So that was like giving up these names to whoever wants to get them, because the Russians and the Chinese, North Koreans, the Iranians, they all monitor, they target officials' emails
Right. Well, look, my final
signal.
Yes, as we have learned. My final thought is that we here at SpyTalk should do our own video to recruit leakers from inside the Trump administration with the very same messages. Your failure, leaders' failure to fulfill promises of prosperity has become true.
Might be an idea whose time has come.
Yeah, right. And maybe we could find our own spies that way. Anyway.
Meanwhile, they can just write to us at spytalk@me.com. And
yeah, all right. Well, we shall see what we get from that.
Anyway, that's another SpyTalk weekend review. I hope you've had as much fun as we have. See you around next week. I'm Jeff Stein.
I'm Michael Isikoff.
See you around.
我不是一个胆小怕事的人。